Working? Okay. And welcome to Lily, High on Life. Our special guest today. Is it Marilyn Leader?
It is.
Leader?
Yeah.
Leader. Let me start again. Okay.
This
How do you
leader is
pronounce?
fine. Yeah.
Okay. And welcome to Lily, High on Life. Our guest today is Marilyn Leader. Marilyn, welcome.
Hi, Lily. How are you?
I'm really well and very excited about talking to you today.
It's lovely to be here. It's
First-
lovely to
first
spend
of
some
all,
time with
yeah.
you.
Well, first of all, being a comedian, it's got to be upbeat and happy. Although I'm sure that's not all the time. But also, you've had such a fascinating life. You've lived in different places around the world and you've done such interesting things. But now you're back in Melbourne. Tell me, what is it about Melbourne and what are you doing now?
Oh, Melbourne's my home. I was born and bred here. So Melbourne's such. Oh, look, culturally, it's so wonderful. We've got so many festivals here, don't we? You know, you've got one of the three biggest comedy festivals in the world, Melbourne International Comedy Festival. So
Tell us about your comedy career.
all right. Well, I actually got into. I've always loved comedy, whether it be live or on screen. But in the 90s, I was definitely a very, very big fan of comedy and used to go and see a lot of live shows in Melbourne. But in the mid 90s, I actually got a scholarship to study film in the US. So I did a Master of Fine Arts at UCLA. I had an Education Abroad scholarship studying screenwriting for film
Wow.
and television.
Were you one of the only Australians at the time?
I believe so. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, I think. Yeah, I was probably one of. I mean, there was some doing an extension course, but I was part of UCLA
They must
master's
have
program.
loved your accent.
They were a bit smitten by my accent, I've got to say, and it was quite good sort of doing, like in the comedy clubs, being a fish out of water. I was told I was the only woman there not doing blue material, so I could just get by my accent. So, no, I did a comedy course there with a guy called Mike Lono, who was actually the comedy partner of Henry Winkler.
Oh,
The
wow.
Fonz, yeah. For those of you listeners that remember Happy Days. So Mark Lono has had, I think he still has it, the Improv, which was a famous LA comedy club, and so I learned how to do stand-up comedy through him. Met some wonderful people, had a lot of great comedy buddies, and I'd sort of try and do about 3 comedy gigs a week there. So I worked at the Comedy Store as well. I often do open mic nights. I worked at Cantor's, the bagel deli, but they had a performance space there, and I think they paid me with chicken soups, but they had really good matzo balls, so it was well worth it.
And you didn't feel intimidated getting up on stage?
Well, Lily, I have a history as a performer. I was in the original Buddy Holly story musicals, so I toured around the country and New Zealand as well with that.
Wow.
So I've always performed. I was a saxophone player and I sang and was the lead in the school musicals and all of that.
Do you
so.
still play saxophone?
It is actually sitting in the corner of my study, gathering dust, but I think I may have to because I have been singing a little bit, and I sing with the band, and there's sax players there that seem to be able to sing and play sax, so we'll get there. I might just have to practice a bit.
So one of the big things about LA is that you get to name drop because everybody knows people that are famous from LA.
Mm-hmm.
So what was that like? You were young, you were starting, you were doing an apprenticeship.
I did a couple of internships. So I did one so at the time it was, mid 90s. So the biggest show at the time was Seinfeld. So that was, I wanted to do an internship as part of my course. And, I sat with the lady who ran, and she said, well, what shows do you like? I said, I like Seinfeld, I like Friends, I like Frasier. So she actually got me a gig with NBC. So it was all those shows. So, but also I worked with Jason Alexander, who plays George on Seinfeld. So he had recently sort of had some success with Pretty Woman, with Richard Gere. And 20th Century Fox offered him a production company to either, direct, star in, or produce.
How do you deal with that at that stage of your life?
I don't know. I just sort of took it in my stride. It was quite exciting. I think being at 20th Century Fox and just having a tour around there and seeing, the mural of Marilyn Monroe and in the 7-Year Itch and seeing Shirley Temple's wing and which was like this beautiful Tudor wing. You can imagine. I think in the 20s, Shirley Temple, the 30s, Shirley Temple would have kept the studio alive. Really,
of course,
so it's fascinating.
And finding accommodation and friends.
Well, that was all through UCLA, so I stayed in the dorm for the poor students, so where we had to actually work. So I had to put in.
Exciting.
It was quite fun. I was just down the road from the Jewish one, so we'd have the parties with the Jewish fellas. But yeah, it was I can't remember what it was called. It was a co-op. So you'd work 4 hours a week and you'd get reduced accommodation. I was quite fortunate. I had quite a lovely room with a gorgeous gal who I'm still sort of connected with. She's done an exchange to Australia too and stayed with me and my cousin and some friends. So yeah, so we sort of go back a long way. But no, I don't know. I'm kind of used to it. I mean, in Australia, I was sort of always involved with film and media. So.
And your Jewishness. I mean, you're obvious, very upfront about it and everything.
Yeah.
Is what does it mean to you being Jewish?
I don't know. It's my culture and my heritage, and I'm so proud of it. Like I've sort of gone out of my way recently to write sort of more Jewish material in my act. I don't know. Like it's just, and we've got such a great history of Jewish comedians with all my favourite comics. Mel Brooks and Woody Allen. They're all, Rob Reiner. All of the greats, right? So. I don't know. It's just within me. It's my grandmother was a Holocaust survivor, and my grandfather unfortunately passed away in Auschwitz. But so it's so intrinsic within me, and we have this capacity to be able to laugh through the tears. I think that's really important.
Huge.
Yeah.
Laugh at ourselves and through the tears.
Yeah. I remember we used to have to whack Mum because, she would try and make us laugh during funerals just so we wouldn't get too upset. Like, Mum, not now. No.
Do you do that Jewish thing where you walk into a room and scan the room to see if anybody else looks Jewish or on the aeroplane?
No, that must just be you, Lily.
Okay, that's just me. I always look.
It's funny because growing up, until I was, just recently, people wouldn't, because I'm, fair hair, blue eyes, people wouldn't necessarily think that I was Jewish, but I think now I've become more Jewish and I think my mannerisms are quite Jewish too, but I don't know, I embrace it. I love it. I'm sort of quite...
That's great.
Yeah.
I, especially with all the anti-Semitism that's around, and especially now at colleges and even in LA. But I remember with the scanning any other Jews, I took a flight on a Friday or Saturday once, and I felt really guilty about it, even though I'm not religious at all and never have been. But I noticed there were no Orthodox Jews on the plane because you can usually pick them. So I was a little bit worried, but it was okay. So how long did you actually spend in Los Angeles?
About a year.
And then you came back to Melbourne.
Yeah.
And what did you do?
Gosh, so I worked as a script assessor for Village Roadshow and ABC Television, but it was just... It wasn't like regular work. It was just, if they had a film that they wanted me to assess or give them some feedback on. So it was sort of, I did that, but I was also, what else did I do? Because trying to remember, so before I went to LA, I'm trying to go back. So I was in a musical and I taught a bit and
it wasn't just stand-up, you were also writing.
Yeah, I was writing as well. Well, attempting to, it was like we were talking before, it probably took 15 years after I came back to be able to actually get a show up for television. So, but yeah, I was, what was your question again? What was I doing when I came back?
Yeah, how did you deal with, because living in LA is so different.
I'll tell you, I
Melbourne.
actually ended up, my day job was actually, that's what I was going to say, was before I left, I worked as an arts officer for Arts Victoria. So I wrote speeches for Jeff Kennett, and he was the Minister for the Arts at the time, and it went to Brumby, ended up being Premier after Jeff. But so I was a political speechwriter and I worked in public affairs.
That is bizarre.
I mean, you'd probably not really. I mean, you'd probably know as a producer, like a lot of producers, film producers and TV producers also work in media comms. It's very similar skills. You know, you're managing events, you're writing. I found it fascinating. Honestly,
Politics.
I found it so interesting. And the people I worked with, a lot of them were ex-journalists, and I found them really interesting, very intelligent. I loved going to work, and it was just really fun being behind the scenes. You know, Minister Madden, Simon Madden, who's the footballer, and it was quite interesting. And I always thought that's what I'd like to write a television show about.
Politics.
Yeah. I mean, look, it's sort of been done now, but I think it's a very interesting world, I think, to be involved with. So
because you're saying that you really loved it and enjoyed it and the people and everything. So did it ever cross your mind to stay in politics rather than...
Well, I'm pretty eccentric, So, like I think I kind of like a bit of razzle dazzle as well. And I like to kind of take the mickey out of things,
So it was always going to be performing.
Yeah, I think so. But I'd sort of slip jokes in. Like I remember there was, the opening of Spring Fashion Week, and I had some line that like, Melbourne does fashion like no other city in Australia. Sydney might have the coat hanger, but what's a hanger without a frock to put it on?
Gorgeous.
So, it's just a bit of fun.
And so you could always see yourself out there, and because did you start off singing or start?
Yeah, well, I'm a saxophone player both. So I did, for the Buddy Holly story, I had to sing, play saxophone, and act. So jack of all trades, master of none.
I mean, that's pretty major.
And
How
dance
did you
too.
get?
I auditioned. Like
You
anyone
just
else.
auditioned
Of course.
in here. You found auditions in Melbourne.
A friend. Well, I studied music and theatre at university, and a friend knew the musical director, and they were looking for people, and I think they were after a saxophone player that sang, which was kind of me. There's not that many. There were people that's what I was saying. There was people at university that were possibly better at playing sax than me, but they didn't have a voice like I do, or they couldn't act like me. So I'm not a bad singer. I'm not a bad actor. I'm not going to say I'm a triple threat because I'm not great at all of them.
But you are
I'm
pretty good.
I'm a pretty good singer and actor, I think. Yeah. I'm quite unique. The way I perform. So I'm a character actor. Yeah.
And did you always see yourself getting married and having kids as well?
I think so. Like I wasn't the sort of gal that dreamt of the white pretty frock or anything like that. I was a bit of a tomboy, I think, but I was definitely really into performing, and I was just like a bubbly little thing. In fact, I think I have older sisters, 10 and 12 years, and all their friends, my nickname to them was Bubbles. So it was just kind of.
They're 10 and 12 years older than you.
Yeah. So I'm the baby by quite a bit. My mum said I wasn't a mistake. I was an afterthought.
That's
which is
really
nice.
nice.
Even if it wasn't true, I was always brought up like a happy afterthought.
And
so
what was that
that's
sibling relationship like with such a
Great.
large age difference?
Oh yeah, well look, my older sister always, Debbie, says that I was her first baby, right? So she was 12 when I was born, and they just kind of adored me. You can imagine I was sort of
And
this
they
cute
played
little
with
fun,
you?
yeah, cute little kid. And my middle sister Julie is Julie Leader. She's a saxophone player. She was with the police, the Victorian Police Band for many, many years. So
Wow.
she got me into saxophone and taught me from a very young age, and
Very cool. So, and when they got a little older and started dating, did they take you out to the discos?
Debbie would take me out on dates with her, absolutely, yeah, which was just kind of amazing. Like my brother-in-law now, I'm thinking I actually spent the first night in their new house I spent with them. It sounds a bit weird, but I helped them unpack, and I mean I think they quite enjoyed my company. It's kind of fun. I think I entertained them.
It's always fascinating when there's a large difference in ages. And that's why I ask, because it can go either way.
But I wonder if that made me a performer, because I have heard that sometimes that can be the thing. When you're the youngest, you're encouraged to entertain, Yeah.
Well, you're also loved and adored by so
Yeah,
many
love
more
the
people.
attention, yeah.
And all of that goes too.
Yeah.
And so when how did you fall in love the first time?
Oh.
Did you just know, or did you date somebody for a while?
Oh gosh, I don't remember. So long ago.
But you just knew you were going to get married when
Oh,
you did.
that question about yeah, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I got married at like 29. I think it was like a few weeks off my 30th birthday. So, that's always the stigma you got. So, no, I think I actually turned 30 on honeymoon. So there you go. I got in just within an inch of my life.
Just in time.
Yeah, yeah.
And what was it like becoming a mother? Like somebody else was the centre.
Lovely, yeah, because I could sing to my little girl and my little boy. We used to joke that like I'd change the arrangement, the same song, but the different words. Like it became like it was a sweet little song that I'd sing to my daughter. But then when my son came along, it became like a big band arrangement. And now, funnily enough, I'll sing that same song to the dog and the cat. So.
So you actually expanded your audience with having children.
Yeah, it's lovely, yeah.
And and I'm assuming that your sisters were a huge help with the kids.
Absolutely,
and everything.
my mum and my mother-in-law as well too, yeah.
You had your in-law. You had a great relationship with your in-laws too, which is lovely. Yeah. It's like the perfect trifecta. To actually get in-laws as well that you get on well with, not only the person marrying into the family.
I was very fortunate that I had so many great helpers, and also because my nieces are only 14 and 16 years younger than me, so they were also really terrific, and my nephew as well. So I think I've only had to pay for a babysitter maybe twice in my life, and I think my niece got angry at me that night and said, "Why didn't you ask me?" And I think one of those times was actually for one of my niece's 21st birthday, and believe it or not, the babysitter actually went to the 21st after we came home. So
it sounds like you had a really warm, close family environment.
Absolutely, yeah.
Any major? I'm not going to ask you specifically what it was, but do you remember ever having any major altercations with any of your sisters or nieces or? No.
I'm pretty happy. Yeah.
It's just always been pretty
yeah. We have
good stuff.
Pretty good relationship at home.
That's
which is
great.
Good. Yeah.
And everybody always knew that you were the performer and you were going to go on stage. So.
My sister was as well. My mum wasn't really all for it. She used to say, "Don't let your daughters on the stage." That was like a big Jewish thing. Like my mum was actually really loved dance, but she was never allowed to do it, right? And then when she got into her 20s and started working and earning her own money, she ended up doing some I think was it a Council of Adult Education dance classes, and that was actually where she met my dad, because my dad, Herbert Leader, my late father was the Melbourne Jewish photographer, and they were at some I don't know, there must have been some Council of Adult Education thing at the Murray River where they all went, and Mum was doing modern dance and Dad must have done some sort of photography thing, and eyes locked. And I think 5 weeks later they were walking across the road and they had a little argument, and Dad went to grab Mum's hand and she pulled it back from him and he yelled at her, this is after 5 weeks, "You're still going to marry me, aren't you?" And she goes, "Yes." And that was how we proposed, and they were both so shocked after 5 weeks. So, yeah, when you know, you know.
That's a gorgeous story.
Yeah, it's cute, isn't it?
And so what's the, what do you see now that you're living in Melbourne and your career seems to be going quite well in the comedy area? Tell me a bit about what it's like working in Melbourne, and if that can, and if you can transition that to being part of the US comedy scene as well, or is it one or the other?
Look, I mean, like I said, I was in LA in the mid-90s. I actually kept with my studies, and I'm a doctor, so I'm a script doctor. So I did a PhD in writing strong and funny female characters. So I sort of got into academia. So that's kind of my day job. And I was full-time. Now I'm 3 days a week, which is great because then I can also do other creative stuff as well. But in answer to your question, look, it's completely different. I mean, LA was, I was working next to where sort of Jay Leno was filming, and I had one night I had Chris Rock come before me when I was performing. So it's a totally different stratosphere. But then at the same time, I'd go to when I came back to Melbourne, I'd perform at the Esplanade Hotel, which was the biggest venue at the time, and I just felt the audiences. The laughter was just, it was just so fab. Like, I don't know, there's something about Australian laughter. It was a bit different to the US laughter. In the US, I felt like it was all professionals in the audience. You know, they were all part of the industry, and so they'd like, you know what I mean? They'd sort of look and say, oh yes, you know, she's funny, da 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 da. But and if they liked you, you'd get another gig. In Australia, I don't know, it's just, there's something about it. I really like, I'm definitely an Australian girl. I want to write Australian stories, you know, with strong, funny female characters, Jewish if I can. So, yeah,
that's great.
Yeah.
So your focus is on both performing and, of course, writing new material for
Writing new material, and also my students too. Like, I convene second year at Swinburne, so I, you know, my students write and create short films, and it's really fun. It's really joyful.
The teaching gives you great
Well,
pleasure.
yeah, I sort of trained as a teacher. I didn't really work in teaching that much. I did a few artist in residencies, but I sort of got other work. But I really like working with adults. Like, you know, that was part of my work as a script assessor. I still do that now. People will send me scripts if they, you know, want me to give them feedback or work with them, help them edit their screenplays. That's sort of my side gig. You know, I quite enjoy doing that, working with, you know, emerging writers and helping them. But if I'm just teaching, I'd go a bit batty, you know. So it's, you know,
it's good to have both.
Yeah. I had some students actually in the audience last night at a gig that I did. Sort of, when I got up, there was like 8 of my students that I currently teach in the front row as I'm doing my filthy material. I sort of said, strap yourselves in, boys. Mama's going to teach you a thing or two.
And what about venues that you can perform at in Melbourne? Are there enough? Has it changed?
Yeah, well, I only worked in Australia as a comedian for a couple of years, and then I got married and just had to get a day job, really. But it was very different then. It was a bit of an icky scene. Like, you really wouldn't, as a young Jewish girl, you really didn't want to be in the, you know, in the green room in the comedy clubs. It just wasn't very nice, you know. It's just a bit icky. There weren't that many women doing it, and I didn't really, you know, I had a few mates, but I didn't really bond with a lot of the comics at the time.
What about the type of comedy in the comedy?
Well, exactly. It was very sexist, you know, and I probably wasn't sure about who I was either. As a comedian, you have to have a really strong sense of self to know what you're going to talk about. So I actually stopped for, literally, I had my kids and I stopped for about 20 years, and I only got back into it about 5 years ago.
How did that happen, that you got back into something you loved?
Oh, look, that's a really good question, because I guess, you know, I would go and see, it's always like, for me, it's like you want to fill a gap, and I wasn't seeing the sort of comedy that I wanted to see, you know, but also it makes sense for me because I'm a writer, I'm a performer, you know what I mean? So to actually, and also a producer, so for me it's a natural fit for me to be a comedian. But to get back into it, believe it or not, do you remember Rachel Berger? You know,
I do.
Yeah, so Rachel, like, I've always been a big fan of Rachel, and she did with a lady called Kath Devaney, who's a journalist. She used to write for The Age. She had she would call it gunners. So it was for people, they were writing courses. Not really a course, what would I say? Just a
stand-up comedy.
Well, she
training,
did stand-up. Yeah, she did stand-up comedy, but it was just like an afternoon that you'd spend doing it. And that was all I really needed. I just needed Rachel to sit behind me and say, yes, Marilyn, you can do it. And get a few tips I had the skills. I just needed to get, you know, the bravery up again to perform, because, I mean, you could give me lines and I could say it and I won't get nervous. But to stand up and talk about yourself, you can get quite nervous. And now I don't really get nervous anymore, Lily, because I do I try and perform a couple of times a week at least, maybe even 3 times. But if I'm performing regularly, I don't get nervous. It's fine. I just kind of do it. And because I lecture as well, it all it all comes together. I'm quite confident on a stage, and sometimes I'll go to some venues where some of the big guys are frightened because there's some, you know, maybe some interesting people, let's just say, in the crowd that might heckle, but I don't. I just look at them in the eye, and they're more scared of me than I am of them. And even if I might be scared, I won't show it. But I don't really feel scared.
The level and quality of comedy has changed.
Yes, so that's your question. Yeah, I do find to be honest, nowadays, like the comedians are so fabulous. You know, we've got very, very clever comedians, and I've got a lot of close friends that are comics now. Whenever I do a gig, I'll always know half a dozen people there, and that's nice. So the issue was before, I didn't want to be going to a club, and you've got to wait a lot of the time. 20, 30 years ago, I didn't really want to be hanging out with the people in the green room, but also they weren't that friendly to me either. Whereas now, you know, there's people that, you know, I just adore, and it's lovely, and I'll go and see them perform. Even I might do a gig and then I might go and see a friend's gig and vice versa. So it's lovely. There's a real camaraderie, and you know, I feel like I'm like now one of the elders, you know.
That's great, isn't it?
Yeah. But I actually also used to do stand up with Eurydice Dixon, who was the young girl that got killed a few years back.
Yeah.
So like we were part of a comedy collective in Richmond, and I would often perform with her, and like we were all the Melbourne comedy community was so devastated. I actually stopped performing for a couple of years actually. I was so upset about it, and I just had to sort of pull back. So I'm really like I just feel like Eurydice would be happy for me to be back up. Yeah.
Really?
Some people became quite political after that, and I thought, you know what, like the way to be political is just to have a microphone in your hand. Really, you don't have to, you know, just a woman with a microphone is a powerful statement, and I think it's really important that, you know, we have avenues for women to be on stage, and whether that's, you know, it's also like my love is doing television, but that takes so long to get up. I'm so happy just to write some material, get up and perform it, and just refine it. I really love it. Like I love the art of stand-up comedy, and for me it's like, you know, some gigs I get paid for, some I don't, but for me it's all about getting decent laughs. That's you know, the thing that pushes me forward. And yeah.
Is it hard to write material for yourself?
No, it's pretty easy. It happens every day. Like I was just out. I had a drink with a few comics after the show, and we're just talking about something, and it was something that happened years ago, and they were laughing. I was like, oh, I should write this down. You know, I should. And like, you know, just things happen, and like usually when I'm out with my friends, I kind of naturally go towards the humorous. Even, you know, in bad situations, I go for the humorous. And you know what it is, you know, the tragedy in time equals comedy. So sometimes it takes a little while to find the funny in things, but I'm pretty quick with it.
That's great.
It's like, you know, you're with a like I'm divorced now, and you know, I date, and you know, every time it goes bad, it's like, great, that'll give me another 10 minutes.
So every experience is valuable.
Yeah. I always threaten the fella. I say, oh, you give me some good stuff there.
I have a girlfriend who's a writer, and I bought these shoes once, and I was showing her, and she said, but Lily, they're too small. I said, but I love them so much. I had to have them even if they were a bit small.
Right.
And they were super fancy, whatever. Years later, she put it into one of her scripts.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. It's a pretty good character. What did she say about it?
Oh, just about buying shoes that were too small because they were just so beautiful.
Well, you're in good company. Celine Dion said the same thing. I think she went into a shoe store, and she loved these shoes, and she said, what size do you have? And they go, what size are you? She goes, no, what size do you have? I'll make it work.
So do you have scripts that you've written that are sitting waiting?
Oh, come on, what screenwriter doesn't have some unpublished scripts in a drawer? You know, of course, yeah.
Do you share them around in Australia or overseas?
Well, you know what, I often, like, they become a calling card script. So sometimes I don't think any of the scripts I've written have been wasted, because I might send it to somebody, you know, for a job. Like, if they want a sample of your work, you can send that.
That's great.
Yeah, like I had a television show that I did a TV pilot for, had Julia Zamiro in it and Nikki Went, and we got very close to it getting made, and, you know, it went to all the networks, and anyway, it didn't get made, but, you know, the head of Channel 9 at the time said, look, next time, you know, just call us up on the phone, you know. So I made a TV pilot, but it didn't go anywhere, but it's still, you know.
You produced part of it yourself?
Well, too. yeah, I did the pilot. So it sort of
great.
set us up, you know, with contacts, etc., etc. So, yeah.
Do you have writing partners, or you just write by yourself?
I do. Yeah.
So you're always working on scripts?
Comedy's really good to write with other people. It's more fun for a start. It's just good to have people to bounce off. Yeah. You find, like, Seinfeld was written in pairs, you know, each.
Oh, they've got huge teams of people.
Well, they had young 25-year-olds, really, like, especially towards the end, you know, as grad students that would end up doing it, and they would actually be on set, because sometimes they change things on set.
Yeah. And Marilyn, I've got to ask you, because there's this really you're smart on stage and you're smart off stage, but there's this really serious part of you that is very grounded in terms of what and who you are and your life and the
Right.
balances between the different things that you do. And then you've got this stage persona, which is totally bizarre, crazy, and outrageous.
Really?
So,
But that's me, Lily. That's a
but all
part
of that.
me. Yeah.
So how did you sit down and decide? Look, I'm going to be completely blue and off color about sex, or because it's a thing and a
Well,
shtick.
we all have sex. Like everyone has sex. I'm just a little bit more open about it than some.
So that's my
But I
question.
like to, men are up on stage talking about sex, and why is it so shocking for a woman to talk about that same stuff? Men date younger women, so why can't I be out there, dating the young dudes? Like,
So
I think
it
it's
was-
lovely to bust open that stereotype. And also, I don't like the idea of, the divorced women that are sitting at home lamenting that they don't have a fella. It's like, well, so get out in there and date it. If the old dudes aren't doing it for you, get out there and get yourself a younger model. It's like, why not?
I loved it. It was more. It was a conscious decision about that's what your character on stage would be. You yourself, who are every part of you, and the bizarreness and the openness.
Yeah, like,
Was that was a conscious decision? Like, or were
Oh,
you
no,
looking
okay,
for?
so-
Were you looking for something that was going to say, okay, this is Marilyn, this is what she does, and that
right.
hook or that grab?
Well, I just, talked about, it's a heightened version of me, as you mentioned. It's like, I wouldn't talk like that at work,
Of
but
course.
I do make little asides, like to people at work about. I just mention about how filthy my material is. I just say that, when they
Yes.
say they want to come up, I'll say to like my manager, oh, I'd make you blush, I sort of say things like that,
Yeah.
so to make it clear, what it is. But yeah, like, it's not too bad. Like, I had this lovely lady from the gym, this beautiful, beautiful sort of middle-aged elderly woman that came up to me after my gig, and she goes, Marilyn, this after I was quite full, she goes, you kept yourself nice. Like, I think there's something about it. Like, I can talk about my sex life, but I'm as shocked saying those things as the audience are hearing them. And also, some of the material that I wrote, I thought, oh, I've got to write something for the young uni boys that come to the gig. So, I wrote that Amy Winehouse sort of number that is quite filthy, and I do get quite shocked when I sing it. But yeah, it's fun. Everyone loves it. So, like, girls reckon that like a little bit of wee comes out when they laugh to that one, because it's like, how far can I take this? Yeah. So, but it's really not that, I don't know, I don't find it, I think that I also like the juxtaposition of things. So, I love the idea that I'm this like sweet little Jewish girl, but then I can be filthy, and I think that's fun because, let's face it, everyone has sex. Like, so let's just embrace it and celebrate it, really. And
Has your mother seen the show?
well, my mother's not with us anymore.
Oh,
so that
I'm
was
so sorry.
But look, that's why I can actually do that stuff, because my mum's not there as a Jewish mum going, oi, Marilyn, what are you doing? She didn't have an accent, but the accent was internal. She was a Carlton girl, but
What about your two older sisters?
Oh, they won't come and see it. I mean,
They won't?
No, it's they would love it. They would absolutely love it. Like, they saw my first show, 5 years ago. Yeah, look, I don't know. I think it's just because, my marriage has split up, and it wasn't so happy, the breakup, and they think that it's going to be about that, but I barely touch on that at all. I think there might be one song, and it's more about my spoodle than about my ex-husband, because it's not my job to.
But
to,
what I really love is what you said just before, which I think is just so important. And the fact that there are women that are divorced and sitting around
Yeah.
doing nothing.
Yeah.
And you do it so that to motivate
I
them.
do. I actually do have altruistic reasons for doing what I'm doing on stage. It actually is why I'm doing it, because I'm quite, like I said, I was a publicist in a past life, and I'm quite good at, spurring people on, and like, I've got a lot of single friends, and, I have people that like I barely know that say, oh, Marilyn, you've been such an inspiration, for me to get out.
Yeah.
These girls that have been divorced for 8 years, that are...
And people want to know. I mean, I've got to tell you, I was shocked. I didn't know how I felt about it for a couple of hours even after I got home.
Oh,
but
really?
I loved the fact that you did it because people want to know what other people do sexually.
Right.
And it's not,
Don't go into that much detail. Oh my God, don't shock your conservative Jewish audience. It's all right, booba, everything's fine.
it is
Keep
fine.
your sheitel on, it's fine.
But it's you know, the fact that you're able to do it and that you do it, it's different times and different stages.
You know what? If you're out there in the comedy clubs and you see what's going down at the moment, it's really not that shocking. Even if you get on Netflix, you see what Ali Wong's doing. I mean, she's still gorgeous. She's still as gorgeous.
Yeah, but I wouldn't go to see Blue People, but I'd go to see your show again.
Thank you.
Because I found it not only entertaining but educational. I
A few
really
people have
did.
said that.
Yeah.
I've got a TV producer I'm working with, and he said the same thing. In what way was it educational?
Well, it's like, oh, really? So that's what you do when you go down on someone.
I don't go into that much detail.
Well, you
Stop
should.
it. Oh,
Even
right.
more.
Okay, you've given me some more material.
And I've
Lily,
got to
that's what
tell you
want.
just really quickly. I actually, on my 50th birthday, I was in Los Angeles and I got myself a gig, a stand-up gig at the Comedy Store
Yay,
upstairs in the
mazel
ballet
tov.
room.
Ah.
And every other, never done it before, never stood up before, did a lot of in front of camera stuff. But every other comedian was a big black guy with his pants halfway down his ass. Got a prime spot in the middle of the bill, which should have been brilliant.
Oh, wow.
The guy in front of me, who was so sweet in the green room, he was taking a plane to see his mother for Mother's Day and everything, gets on stage and does all this stuff about sex with fat girls.
Oh.
And I'm a little larger, and I'm standing there and I'm just absolutely shocked. And I just dropped everything that I had because I couldn't just go on and do a set.
Awful. You shouldn't
And
have
I
listened
talked
to
about,
it.
but I talked about what a lovely boy he was back in the
that's
green
clever.
room,
That's
and
very
I sort
clever.
of just
Good on you.
did stuff off the top of my head,
Yeah.
but completely threw me off. So that was the first and last time I did stand up, and that's why when I ask you,
you have to keep at it. Like, there's always
Yes.
going to be things that'll throw you. But, I mean, I could have got a little bit thrown seeing my students there. Like, that's my biggest fear, you know. But it was fine. Like, they're lovely boys. And I just, for the first half or the first third, I couldn't look them in the eyes. I was looking everywhere else. But then the first filthy bit, then I looked them in the eyes. And that's when I said, strap yourselves in, boys. And then it was fine after that.
Yeah.
It was absolutely fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't say the P word, so it was...
And at this stage, I don't think it even matters. It's
No,
just...
no, but I don't get embarrassed anymore. Like, now I've said all those gags so much, I'm quite fine about it all, because like I said, I do kind of keep myself nice, and I've still got, you know, like kids, and I'm still a mum and a family woman, and it's just a character at the end of the day. It's just a character. I mean, of course there's a bit of truth in, everything I talk about, but you exaggerate a little bit, and the things I don't talk about is the hot stuff,
Okay, I want to see that in the next show. I need you to integrate.
Yeah, well, I'm doing the MILF Next Door again for Fringe Festival in October, and so I'm going to do 2 nights at a classic Southside and then 4 nights at Speakeasy Theatre, which is fun. It's a burlesque club, in town. So have you seen The Marvellous Mrs. Maisels?
No.
Oh, okay. So it's Marvellous Mrs. Maisels is a TV show, which I'm sure a lot of your listeners would have
heard about it. I just haven't found it.
Yeah, so she's a New York Jewish mum whose husband cheats on her, and she becomes a stand-up comedian, and it's brilliant. It's set in the 1950s with Lenny Bruce, and it's wonderful. You must watch it. So she ends up working at a strip club because she couldn't do her material at a normal club. So this club isn't quite a strip club; it's burlesque. So it's very kind of French and gorgeous, and women with feathers, but with their buzzies out. But then I'm the comedian that stands up on stage with the mic. And I keep my clothes on. So you'll be very happy to know.
Are there any boundaries you wouldn't cross?
Look, I'm not filthy. She says I am filthy, but I'm not. How do I explain?
Let's just define
I keep my
this.
clothes on.
Okay.
I keep my clothes on. I might talk about stuff.
So let's just define filthy here a little bit, because
I am filthy. I am filthy.
Yeah, the
but
words
not
that
filthy
come out
for the
of your
sake.
mouth.
But not filthy for the sake of being filthy.
And
I don't do it for shock value.
It's not just swearing.
No.
And it's not saying the word fuck. In fact, You do say
I
fuck,
maybe
but
say
not
it once or twice, but
Yeah,
I say
but
to my
it's not-
students, if you're going to say the F word, say it once and do it well.
Yeah.
Don't keep using it because that's just lazy. It's like what you say to your young kids: use your words.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm articulate, so I'd rather use words. But if I'm going to say it, it's in. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
in a rhythm.
So
I'll do it in a song because it's funny.
Yes, and it's
a
not
funny
just,
word. Yeah.
It's not just the artistic value or the humour in what you do. There's what I'm feeling from this interview is that there's a lot of psychological stuff behind it that is also educational, not just sexually, but also educational in terms of what Lily High on Life's all about, motivating people to do something different.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I kind of like to, like I said, I start the show and I do a song, which is I change the words to a sort of an iconic 70s female rock song, which, it's Barracuda basically, but I change the words and it's about the breakup of my marriage, and instead of Barracuda, it was like he was a Jewish law student, so yeah. And it sort of goes from there. But then I talk about, how I ended up sort of dating, and I started with guys my age, but, they sort of wanted to pin me down and set the term of the relationship before, they'd even met me. And, it sort of felt, you don't want to go from one marriage to another. Like, I sort of just wanted to date. And, so.
Are you in a relationship
I'm
now?
not in a relationship, but I'm dating. Yeah. So.
And the whole lockdown thing is so wonderful and relatable.
It was, that was the gift that kept on giving. So I did actually end up doing some online dating. Like I swore I wouldn't do it because I wasn't brought up with it, but now that's how you date. And honestly, it was a blessing during lockdown that I could chat to these lovely fellas. People would say horrible things about online dating, but I only found it great because I could, it was writing. I could practice my shtick with these fellas, and I think I'd entertain them and they'd entertain me, and just via text, And I wasn't doing sexting or that sort of stuff, but it was all quite entertaining, It was quite, there might have been one or two sextings, but come see the show. So I found that all quite fun, but it was really, I was quite bored with the older guys, and so my friend said, well, I saw that she went a bit younger. I thought, why don't I try that? So
I totally agree with you about younger men, totally. But at the same time, you've got to stay open to the older ones as well.
Of course. But if I can find one that's
so much
easier. And they say that the girls their age, they say they're just idiots. They say that they're very materialistic and just kind of a bit, Kardashians. They're a bit like that. Whereas I think an older woman, we're a bit more down to earth. We know what we want, and we're kind of fun, And look, they probably don't want babies, and we sure as hell don't want our more babies. We've had our babies, Is it biologically possible? I don't know, but I think it's a better match. I think, but I'm definitely open to a guy my age. If I can find one that will keep up with me, that's the problem. Some of the young guys can't keep up with me, Lily. Good luck, fellas. Good luck. If there's someone out there, look me up.
Well, the older Jewish guys that can tend to go for the shiksas because they don't feel there's a Jewish woman that can keep up with them.
Right. Well, there's probably, if I'm there, there's got to be someone out there. He'll probably be a New Yorker, though. Have to go to New York to find
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And also a guy that's like I'm quite busy and active, and I do a lot of stuff. A guy that's not going to be intimidated by me either.
I didn't ask you, what do your kids say about what you do? Have they seen your show?
No, I won't let them see my show. Oh, you know what? I think, somebody said to me, kids have to rebel. So, usually you have the conservative mum, so the kids rebel with, going out and partying. But the mum that goes out, then the kids become a little bit more conservative. So sometimes they're a bit disapproving of me, but we sort of have a bit of a laugh about it. I think their friends all think it's hilarious, and we sort of.
And they've got to have a good attitude about it because they live with you.
Well, my original show was, I was doing a bit of yoga teaching at the time, so I did this Taylor Swift song, shake it off, but it was like what happens in yoga, people blow one off, people are always farting in yoga. So my daughter actually, bless her, she did the farting sound effects for that song for me. Very tasteful, very tasteful.
Either of them following in your footsteps?
You know what? I think that was also their way of rebelling. They're both beautiful entertainers. Like my daughter's got a great voice, played piano. My son was an award-winning dancer, but
wow.
They stopped. Once they hit puberty, that's it. They kind of stopped. But we always joke that we have an imaginary microphone that goes around our house, and like we had fun, the three of us in lockdown. Like I split up with my ex 2 weeks before the first lockdown, and the three of us it was a joy. Lockdown was really fun. It was really fun together. Like we did entertain each other, and my son got in trouble because he they were doing the homeschooling and they had the video on, and the principal said, some kids are turning up to this at Bialik, turning up to homeschooling not in the correct uniform, and some aren't wearing anything at all. I think my son was topless during sport class and like throwing his jumper around his head and dancing for everyone. But I said, he's entertaining them. He's a dancer. He's keeping morale up. So there you go.
So, just in the few minutes we've got left, what is it that you would like your kids to come away from your parenting?
Oh, well, I think it's just that, that mums don't, have a life as well, and I think that can only be a positive thing. Like I've heard that women that work apparently, I think it's quite a good influence on the children, because they see that. And I think, honestly, the younger generation, they're sort of used to the parents working, and it's also just that life doesn't stop when when you have hardship. Life doesn't stop. You got to, when life gives you lemons, you make lemonade. That's kind of my philosophy. So yeah.
So they've also got a good sense of humour. They can take life in their stride.
Yeah. I think it's been very difficult for kids, that have gone through lockdown. I think that's been the real challenge for them. So, sort of trying to be there for them through those difficulties. My daughter did VCE during lockdown, year 11 and 12, but she did so well. So, she still said, I could have done better, Mum, but she really couldn't have. She did amazingly well.
Wow.
Yeah.
And have you got a show coming up? Is there something you'd like to plug?
Yeah, so like I said, the MILF Next Door will be on in October. I think it's 9th. You'll have to look up the dates, but if you look up Marilyn Leader, the MILF Next Door, Classic Southside, which is, the classic cinema. Upstairs is a comedy and jazz bar. So that'll be 2 nights in October, and also 4 nights I'll be, for those of you that would prefer to go into the city, in Flinders Street is Speakeasy Theatre. So also just look up Marilyn Leader, the MILF Next Door. You're welcome to follow me on Facebook, Marilyn Leader Comedy, Leader Leder. But yeah, just drop me a line or
and
just
your
follow
own
me.
website as well, or just Facebook?
It's all Facebook and Insta these days. Yeah, so
really cool.
Yeah, well, I do lots of gigs around town during the week, so you can always see what's coming up. I usually post, I do like 5-10 minute spots, a couple of times a week at various venues. So yeah,
excellent. It's been so delightful sitting and talking to you.
Likewise.
And finding the real Marilyn. And she really is just like on stage.
Oh, wow.
With everything else that comes with it. Thank you so much.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Excellent.
That went quickly, didn't it?
It always does.
Fun.
And there were lots of really